Hello, good evening, and welcome back. So you might have heard that Dave Chappelle's latest special, Sticks and Stones, received awful critic reviews, and on RottenTomatoes.com we have 30% from the Tomatometer, so the critic score, and 99% from the audience score. So as you can see, there's a big disparity, as seems to be the case with so many of these things, that the critics and the audience are not attuned with each other, and therefore at this point, what's the point of critics? We saw this starting off with Gamergate, but for different reasons slightly there, which was that the game developers were just sleeping with the game critics in order to boost their own scores, and therefore the ethics of game journalism was dead. But similarly, but to a worse extent here, it is critics forcing their own ideology onto a platform where it isn't wanted, and therefore these are no longer objective reviews, but they are all through the lens of intersectionality, and that is then ruining the enjoyment from it. And that is what these reviews tend to say, if they're from so-called top critics. They say from Salon.com, Sticks and Stones exists as a defiant sign to intentionally offend large swaths of the audience Chappelle deems too thin-skinned and easily outraged, while serving up simple low-bar yucks to anyone yearning for validation of their anti-PC stance. So it's sanctimonious pricks being sanctimonious. How delightful. And from Slate, like dropping in on a rascally uncle who doesn't know or doesn't care how much he's disappointing you. Again, nobody seems to agree with these people. Lacking empathy can certainly be amusing, but Sticks and Stones is a tired routine by a man who forgot to layer jokes into his act, too often sounding like a pundit on Fox News. Well, considering Fox News is essentially reaching across the aisle to grab left-leaning commentators, I don't think they're doing such a bad job. But when you get down to the actual people, he's one of the few comedians who can really touch on a lot of different sensitive topics and still make it funny. I couldn't help but appreciate the fact that, well, this guy will go do it. He'll go there. And there's an overwhelming feeling of the now, as you watch Sticks and Stones, it feels immediate, a plea from one of our very best comedians to his own audience to stop the hysteria. And that's essentially the main thread that we're seeing. Some have said, though, that this is essentially like a pressure valve. So if you can allow the disdain of the current situation to be in a controlled manner, then you don't have to worry about it getting any worse, and that's what Dave Chappelle is showing here, essentially. That if the hate at the system can be channeled through Dave Chappelle, then nothing bad is going to happen, and you won't get riots in the streets, because at least he's still allowed to do it. And this is also the essence of why censorship is a bad idea and freedom of speech is good, because if people feel like they're being listened to, then they're not going to act more radically and extreme, and therefore this valve of inconsistent standards of speech is allowing him to speak now, just so that other people don't feel disillusioned when they aren't allowed to speak, and that's why it's being done here. But as we read on, they've said that they've tried to get people from both sides of the aisle, and this reminds me of Bill Burr said a while ago. So if we read this from one of the a trans woman, okay. I wouldn't say you shouldn't make jokes about Michael Jackson, or you shouldn't make jokes about trans people unless you're trans, or you shouldn't make jokes about school shootings unless you've been in a school shooting. No, I wouldn't put that level of censorship on anyone. Grillo told the rap. But they didn't love a joke in which a character isn't sure pronouns used for trans people. I guess the most offensive joke I would say personally was the joke about the LGBT people in the car, and when he says, "Oh yes, hi," whatever pronoun you're comfortable with. That kind of rankled me a little bit, but otherwise I didn't think it was a terribly mean-spirited performance. And that's what Bill Burr says a lot, that well, you might care a lot about animals, perhaps, and cruelty to animals. So you could joke about all sorts of things, and you could joke about racism, you could joke about the Holocaust, sexism, and all that. But if you get to making jokes about making stews out of cats, and your cat's gone missing, so go check the local Chinese takeaway, then those things would be particularly offensive to those people, but they're going to disregard everything else until it got into their particular ballpark, at which point they then take offence. So this person has definitely been more reasonable with it, and I think considering that they were asked their opinion, they gave it. So yeah, that's fine. And the common thread that I agree with is that if you don't like it, then don't watch it. Just stay out of it. That's fine. Seeing as your reviews are pointless and they don't give any information at all. If anything, they're worse than pointless, because they're telling people incorrect things. But nonetheless, at least it shows that the culture hasn't shifted, and it's just the overpressing elites from their ivory towers, trying to force things upon people which they're not accepting. And Dave Chapelle shows that the spirit of the people is still with the freedom of speech, and people want to laugh about things. So I think that we have good news there in that regard. So I will end with 2 points. One is, of course, Sarah Silverman making jokes and dressing up as a Nazi. I believe Hitler in particular. To call Trump supporters Nazis as well, but that's jokes, so it's fine, apparently. And also to say with this that Dave Chappelle mentioned, and seeing as YouTube doesn't seem to recommend my content, I don't care about censoring. So why is it that I can say the word nigger with such impunity, but I can't say the word faggot? And the point was, well, hey, it's because you're not gay. To which Chappelle's point is, but I'm not a nigger either. So, yeah. And as the point in one of these comments had also said, that the problem with identity politics is trying to define people by just one of their characteristics. So it's basically saying, oh yeah, black people, that means nigger, and they're one and the same. So no, they're not. Not at all. If something's used in a derogatory context, then it doesn't follow that at all. And it's also the same thing. If, oh yes, let's go ask this LGBTQ person, because clearly this trans person has exactly the same beliefs as this gay person. So, no, how ridiculous are you going to be? Of course not. Everybody's an individual, and once we reject identity politics and get back to the individual, then actually we can start advancing society as we did before. But until then, we're stuck in this vicious cycle. But as always, let me know what you guys think below. Always interested to hear what you guys have to say, and if you've seen the special, let me know what you think. I'm always interested, always on the lookout for more comedy specials, so I'm glad that this one has graced our presence. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.